The cave was dark and cold. Deep inside the rocky mountain, something huge was dying. Each breath came slow and painful. The sound echoed off the stone walls like thunder rolling across the sky. Bekdu lay on his side. His massive body filled most of the cave. Once his scales had been bright red like fire. Now they were dull and cracked. Some had fallen off completely, leaving raw patches of skin underneath. His golden eyes, which had seen 3,000 years pass by, could barely stay open. The dragon remembered better days. He remembered flying high above the clouds, his wings spanning wider than most buildings. He remembered his roar shaking entire mountains. He remembered breathing flames so hot they could melt the strongest metals in the galaxy. Now he could barely lift his great head from the cave floor. The poison was winning. It moved through his blood like ice water, freezing everything it touched. The Kaleth Empire had created this weapon just for dragons like him. They called it Dragon Death. It was designed to kill his species slowly and painfully. Bekdu had been the last free dragon in this part of the galaxy. The others had already fallen to Kaleth hunters or their terrible weapons. He had hidden in this cave for weeks, hoping the poison would leave his system, but it only got worse each day. His breathing became more difficult. Each breath felt like lifting a mountain. His heart, which had beaten strong for 30 centuries, now struggled to pump the poisoned blood through his body. He was ready to give up, ready to join his fallen brothers and sisters in whatever came after death. Then he heard something. Footsteps. They were small and light. Not the heavy boots of Kaleth soldiers, not the scurrying claws of cave scavengers looking for scraps. These steps had a rhythm to them. Someone was walking, not running. Someone who was not afraid. The footsteps got closer. Bekdu tried to lift his head, but the effort sent waves of pain through his body. He could smell something new in the air. It was a warm smell, like sunlight on grass. It was nothing like the cold metal smell of the Kaleth or the sharp chemical scent of their weapons. A figure appeared at the cave entrance. It was small, much smaller than a Kaleth warrior. The shape was strange, too. It walked on 2 legs but had no tail. Its skin had no scales or armor plates. Instead, it wore some kind of soft covering over its body. The creature stepped into the cave without fear. Most beings would run when they saw a dragon, even a dying one, but this strange visitor walked closer, its movements careful but not afraid. Bekdu could see the creature better now. Its face was smooth and soft-looking. Dark hair fell around its head. Most surprising of all, its eyes showed no fear when they looked at the dragon. Instead, they showed something Bekdu had not seen in a very long time. They showed kindness. The creature was young. Bekdu had seen enough species in his long life to recognize youth when he saw it. This was barely more than a child by any measure. But there was something old in its eyes, something that spoke of pain and loss. The young being moved closer to Bekdu's massive head. It stopped just a few steps away and spoke in a voice that was gentle and musical. "You are hurt," it said. The words were simple but filled with concern. Bekdu tried to speak. His voice came out like rocks grinding against each other. It had been days since he had spoken to anyone. "What are you?" The creature tilted its head slightly. "I am Jiho, I am human." "What happened to you?" "Human." The word meant nothing to Bekdu. In all his 3,000 years traveling across dozens of star systems, he had never heard of humans before. This Jiho looked so fragile, so easy to break, yet it stood calmly before a dragon that could have crushed it with one claw. "Poison," Bekdu whispered. The effort of speaking made him cough, and drops of his blood hit the cave floor. "The Kaleth Empire. They have doomed my kind." Something changed in Jiho's face when he heard about the Kaleth Empire. The kindness was still there, but now there was anger too. It was the quiet kind of anger that runs deep like water under ice. "The Kaleth," Jiho said softly. "They destroyed my world too." Bekdu looked at this young human with new interest. If the Kaleth had destroyed Jiho's world, then they had something in common. They were both victims of the Empire's endless hunger for conquest. "How did you survive?" the dragon asked. "I ran," Jiho said simply. "I have been running for months, hiding on different planets. The Kaleth are still looking for me and others like me, others like him." That suggested this human was not ordinary, even among its own kind. Bekdu's ancient mind began to work despite the poison clouding his thoughts. There were old legends, stories told by the eldest of his kind, tales of a young species that would come from far away when the galaxy was in its darkest time, a species that could do things that seemed impossible. Jiho stepped even closer to the dragon. "You are dying," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," Bekdu admitted. "The poison cannot be cured. It was made specifically to kill dragons. Nothing can stop it." The human boy studied the dragon's massive form. His eyes moved over the cracked scales, the patches where poison had eaten through the natural armor, the labored rise and fall of the great chest with each difficult breath. "Maybe," Jiho said quietly, "but maybe not." Before Bekdu could ask what he meant, the young human did something completely unexpected. Jiho walked right up to the dragon's great head and knelt beside it. Without hesitation or fear, he placed his small hand against one of Bekdu's scales. The moment Jiho's hand made contact, everything changed. Warmth spread from the point of contact. Not the burning heat of dragon fire, but something completely different. It felt like the first warm day after a long winter. It felt like cool water after days in the desert. It felt like hope after despair. The constant pain that had been Bekdu's companion for weeks began to fade. The ice-cold feeling of the poison started to melt away. The dragon could feel his heart beating stronger, his blood flowing more freely. But something else was happening too. Jiho's face had gone pale. The boy was breathing hard as if he was running a great race. Sweat appeared on his forehead despite the cool air of the cave. "What are you doing?" Bekdu whispered, afraid to move and break whatever miracle was taking place. "I do not know," Jiho replied through gritted teeth. "But I can feel your pain. I can feel the sickness inside you, and somehow I can take it away." The dragon's enhanced senses could detect subtle changes in the human boy. Jiho's heart was beating very fast. His body temperature was rising. Most alarming of all, Bekdu could smell traces of the same poison that had been killing him. Somehow, impossibly, this young human was drawing the deadly toxin into his own body. "Stop," Bekdu commanded, trying to pull his head away. "You will die, young human. This poison was designed to kill beings much stronger than you." But Jiho pressed his hand more firmly against the dragon's scales. His jaw was set with determination that reminded Bekdu of the greatest warriors he had known. "I have never met a dragon before," the boy said. "But I know you are not meant to die like this. Hidden in a dark cave, alone and in pain. That is not right." Minutes passed. With each one, Bekdu felt stronger while Jiho appeared to grow weaker. The dragon's vision became clearer. The trembling in his limbs stopped. He could breathe without pain for the first time in weeks. But the cost was clear. Jiho's skin had taken on a sickly color. His hand shook against the dragon's scales. Dark circles appeared under his eyes. "Enough," Bekdu said firmly, managing to lift his head for the first time in days. "I will not have your death on my conscience, brave one." Jiho stumbled backward, his hand finally leaving the dragon's scales. The boy swayed on his feet like a tree in strong wind. For a moment, Bekdu thought the young human might fall. Instead, Jiho straightened with visible effort and managed to smile. "You look much better already," the human said, though his own condition suggested the opposite. Bekdu stared at this remarkable young being. In 3,000 years of life, he had never witnessed anything like what had just happened. The ability to transfer sickness from one being to another went against every law of nature he knew. Yet this small human had done exactly that. "How is this possible?" Bekdu asked. Jiho shrugged, a gesture that seemed both casual and profound. "I do not know. I have always been able to do things like this. My parents said I was special, but they never explained what that meant." The dragon studied the boy with growing respect and curiosity. Here was a being that had just saved his life using abilities that should not exist. A creature so young and seemingly fragile, yet possessing power beyond understanding. "What you just did," Bekdu said slowly, "it should be impossible." "Many things should be impossible," Jiho replied, "but they happen anyway." As the dragon looked at this brave young human who had risked his own life to save a complete stranger, he began to think that perhaps the old legends were true after all. Perhaps this was the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. The cave felt different now. Where before there had been only the smell of death and decay, now there was something else. Hope. It was a strange feeling for both the dragon and the human boy who sat facing each other in the dim light. Bekdu could move his head freely for the first time in weeks. His golden eyes were clear and bright again. The constant pain that had been eating away at his strength was almost gone. He felt like he could even stand up if he tried, though he did not want to risk frightening the brave young human who had saved his life. Jiho sat on a small rock near the cave entrance. His face was still pale from whatever he had done to heal the dragon. Dark circles under his eyes made him look older than his years. But he was alive, and that was more than Bekdu had dared to hope for when he saw the boy taking the poison into himself. "You should be dead," the dragon said quietly. "That poison was designed by the best Kaleth scientists. It was made to kill dragons in days. A human should not have lasted minutes." Jiho looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I have always been different. Even on Earth, before the Kaleth came, I could do things other people could not do." "What kind of things?" The boy was quiet for a moment, remembering. "When I was very young, maybe 5 years old, my grandmother got very sick. The doctor said she would die. But I touched her hand and she got better. My parents were happy, but they were also scared." Bekdu listened carefully. In his long life, he had met many beings with unusual abilities. But they always had explanations. Some species could heal faster because of their biology. Others had mental powers because of how their brains worked. What Jiho described sounded like something much more mysterious. "Were there others like you on your world?" the dragon asked. "A few," Jiho said. "My sister Mira could make plants grow just by touching them. She could take a dying tree and make it bloom with flowers. My friend Deho always knew what people were feeling, even when they tried to hide it. We thought we were just lucky to be special. But the Kaleth discovered these abilities." Jiho's face grew dark with anger and sadness. "They came to our world pretending to be peaceful explorers. They said they wanted to learn about different species and make friends. Our leaders believed them." The dragon had heard similar stories from dozens of conquered worlds. The Kaleth Empire always used the same approach. They would arrive with gifts and friendly words, studying their targets carefully. Then when they knew enough, the warships would come. "How long did they watch your world?" Bekdu asked. 3 months. They set up research stations and said they were conducting a galactic census. They asked questions about our history, our technology, our population. They seemed so interested in learning about human culture. Jiho's hands clenched into fists. "We thought we had made first contact with friendly aliens. We were so excited to join the galactic community. The census was preparation for invasion. Yes, when their war fleet arrived, they knew exactly where all our military bases were. They knew which cities had the most people, which factories made weapons, which leaders were most important. Our armies could not even slow them down." Bekdu felt the familiar rage building in his chest. He had seen too many worlds fall to Kaleth deception. Entire civilizations wiped out because they chose to trust instead of fight. "But they did not just conquer your world," the dragon said. "They took prisoners." Jiho nodded slowly. "Millions of humans were taken as slaves. They separated us by age and what we could do. Strong adults went to work camps. Smart people went to research facilities. Children and old people." He paused, swallowing hard. "Most children and old people were killed immediately." The dragon's claws scraped against the stone floor. Even in his weakened state, his anger at the Kaleth Empire burned hot. "But some children survived, the special ones. Children like me who could do impossible things. The Kaleth called us anomalies. They wanted to understand how our abilities worked, so they could copy them. Or destroy them," Jiho said bitterly. "The Kaleth have conquered hundreds of worlds. They have seen every kind of natural ability that evolution can produce. But humans with our gifts were something new, something they had never encountered before." Bekdu studied the young human with growing interest. What did their tests show? Nothing that made sense. They ran every scan they could think of. They studied our blood, our brains, our DNA. They compared us to normal humans and to other species with unusual abilities, but they could not find any scientific reason for what we could do. This was fascinating to the dragon. The Kaleth Empire had the most advanced science in the galaxy. If their researchers could not explain human abilities, then those abilities truly were beyond normal understanding. "They called us dangerous," Jiho continued, "not because we were strong or violent, but because we could not be explained. The Kaleth fear anything they cannot control or understand. So they decided to eliminate you?" "Yes. After months of tests, they gave up trying to figure us out. They said we were too unpredictable to be allowed to live. The order came down to execute all the anomaly subjects." Bekdu could see the pain in the boy's eyes as he remembered. "But you escaped. During one of their experiments, something went wrong. They were testing Deho's empathic abilities by exposing him to extreme emotions, but instead of just reading feelings, he somehow projected them back into the Kaleth scientists. The feedback overloaded their equipment and caused an explosion. And in the chaos, some of you got away. 7 of us made it to the shuttle bay. We stole a small ship and escaped before the station went into lockdown. Deho did not make it. He died saving the rest of us. The dragon felt deep respect for these human children who had faced such horror yet still found the courage to fight back. Where are the others now? Scattered across the galaxy. We split up to make it harder for the Kaleth to track us. I have been alone for 2 months, hiding on different planets and trying to stay ahead of their search teams. 2 months is a long time for a child to survive alone in space. Jiho managed a small smile. Humans are good at surviving. Even when everything seems hopeless, we find a way to keep going. And you have been using your abilities to help others during this time. When I can. I helped an injured Velkan trader on Kepler Station. I healed some sick children on New Arcturus. Small things, but it felt good to help instead of just hiding. Bektu was impressed by the boy's compassion. After losing his world and family, after being hunted across the galaxy, Jiho still chose to help strangers rather than thinking only of himself. The Kaleth are still looking for you, the dragon said. Always. They have search ships in every system. Bounty hunters too. They are offering a huge reward for any surviving anomaly subjects, dead or alive. Then why did you risk exposing yourself to help me? You could have walked past this cave and been safely away before I even knew you were here. Jiho was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the question. When he finally answered, his voice was soft but determined. Because leaving you to die alone would have been wrong. My parents taught me that we have a responsibility to help others when we can, even if it is dangerous. Especially if it is dangerous. The dragon felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with his returning strength. Here was a being who had lost everything, but still held on to the values that made him good. It was the kind of courage that Bektu had rarely seen in his 3,000 years of life. You saved my life, young Jiho, the dragon said formally. By the ancient laws of my people, that makes you family. I am bound by honor to protect and help you for as long as I live. Jiho looked up at the massive dragon with surprise. I did not know dragons had families. We do. And now so do you. For the first time since entering the cave, Jiho smiled a genuine smile. It transformed his young face, chasing away some of the sadness and fear that had settled there. So what happens now? The boy asked. Bektu's golden eyes gleamed with the first spark of real hope he had felt in months. Now, young human, we begin to fight back. The morning light filtered through the cave entrance, casting long shadows across the stone floor. Bektu felt stronger than he had in months. His body was healing rapidly now that the poison was gone. He could feel his strength returning with each passing hour. Jiho sat near a small fire he had built using dry wood from outside the cave. The human boy looked better too. The pale sickness from the night before was gone, replaced by the healthy color of youth. Whatever process had allowed him to absorb the dragon's poison seemed to have run its course. Tell me about the resistance, Jiho said, stirring the flames with a stick. You said we should fight back, but how can we fight an entire empire? Bektu shifted his position, careful not to disturb the rocks above them. The Kaleth Empire seems powerful because they have conquered so many worlds. But their strength is also their weakness. What do you mean? They rule through fear and control. Every species they conquer becomes a potential enemy. They have to keep millions of different beings under control across thousands of worlds. That takes enormous resources and constant attention. Jiho nodded slowly. So if enough groups rebelled at the same time? Exactly. The Empire would not be able to respond to threats everywhere at once. But coordination between different resistance groups has always been the problem. Most species do not trust each other enough to work together. The dragon's golden eyes focused on something beyond the cave walls, remembering past battles and lost opportunities. I have seen many uprisings fail because the rebels could not unite. The Kaleth are experts at turning different species against each other. But you think that might change now? Jiho asked. Because of humans like you, yes. Your abilities represent something completely new in the galaxy, something that could change how different species interact with each other. Bektu explained what he had learned about the galaxy's political situation during his long life. The Kaleth Empire controlled about 40% of known space, but their rule was maintained through careful manipulation, rather than pure military strength. They would support one species against another, provide weapons to favored groups while starving others of resources, and spread propaganda about the dangers of alien contact. Most species have never actually worked closely with aliens, the dragon continued. They only know what the Kaleth tell them about other races. Fear of the unknown keeps them isolated and weak, so the Empire stays in power by making sure nobody trusts anybody else. Correct, but your healing ability could change that. When beings from different species see you helping them without asking for anything in return, it challenges everything they have been taught about aliens. Jiho poked at the fire, thinking about this. You really think humans could make that much difference? There are only a few dozen of us left. Sometimes a few individuals can change the course of history, Bekdu said. But you would not be fighting alone. There are resistance groups on hundreds of worlds. What they lack is hope and a reason to believe they can win. The dragon told Jiho about some of the groups he knew. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, a species called the Karathi had been enslaved for over a decade. Their leader, a warrior named Xianghua, commanded 3 squadrons of fighters who attacked Kaleth supply convoys. But they were slowly losing ground and running out of weapons. In the Vega system, the crystalline beings of Vendra Prime had been fighting a guerrilla war for 20 years. They were masters of advanced technology, but their numbers were small and getting smaller with each battle. The nomadic wanderer clans controlled secret hyperspace routes that the Kaleth could not find. They helped refugees escape conquered worlds, but they refused to take direct action against the Empire. Each group has strengths and weaknesses, Bekdu explained, but they have never worked together because they do not trust each other enough. And you think I could help them trust each other? I think you could show them something they have never seen before. Proof that different species can work together for the common good instead of just their own survival. Jiho was quiet for several minutes, staring into the flames. The weight of what the dragon was suggesting was enormous. The idea that a 16-year-old human boy could help unite an entire galaxy seemed impossible. There is something else, Bekdu said gently. The other human survivors. If we build a strong enough resistance network, we might be able to find them and bring them to safety. This made Jiho look up with sudden interest. You think they are still alive? The Kaleth would not kill them immediately. Humans with abilities like yours are too valuable as research subjects. They will be kept in high-security facilities, but they will be kept alive. Hope flickered in the boy's eyes. Mira and Sanho and the others could still be out there. Very likely. And if we can locate the facilities where they are being held, we might be able to rescue them. How would we even begin to do something like that? Bekdu smiled, showing rows of teeth that gleamed like polished metal. We start small. We make contact with one resistance group and prove that humans can be trusted allies. Then we use that success to approach other groups. Which group should we contact first? The dragon considered this carefully. Xianghua and his Karathi fighters would be a good choice. They are practical warriors who judge allies by actions rather than words. If you could heal some of their injured fighters, they would quickly see your value. Where would we find them? They operate out of the asteroid fields near Kepler 442b. My ship is hidden not far from here. Once I am fully recovered, we can travel there and make contact. Jiho stood up and walked to the cave entrance, looking out at the alien landscape beyond. 2 small suns hung in the sky, casting everything in a warm golden light. Strange plants with crystalline leaves grew from cracks in the rocks. What if this does not work? He asked without turning around. What if the different resistance groups still refuse to work together? Then we will have tried, Bekdu replied. And trying is better than giving up without a fight. My parents used to say that hope is the most powerful force in the universe, Jiho said softly. Even when everything looks impossible, as long as people have hope, they will keep fighting. Your parents were wise. They died believing that humanity would survive somehow, that our species would find a way to keep going even after Earth was destroyed. The boy turned back to face the dragon. Maybe this is how we survive, not by hiding and running, but by helping others fight back. Bekdu felt a deep respect for this young human's courage. After losing his world, his family, and nearly his own life, Jiho was still willing to risk everything to help others. It was the kind of heroism that legends were built around. There is one more thing you should know, the dragon said. Once we begin this path, there will be no going back. The Kaleth Empire will hunt us across the galaxy. The danger will be constant. Jiho nodded. I have been running and hiding for months. At least this way I will be running toward something instead of just away from something. And you are certain this is what you want? The boy's answer came without hesitation. When I was little, I used to dream about being a hero like the characters in stories. I wanted to save people and make the world better. I never imagined it would be like this, but maybe this is my chance to actually do some good. Bektu felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Pride in another being's courage. This human child had the heart of a true warrior, tempered by compassion and wisdom beyond his years. Then we have work to do, the dragon said, beginning to rise to his feet for the first time in weeks. The galaxy will not save itself. As Jiho watched the ancient dragon stand and stretch his powerful limbs, both of them understood that they were about to begin a journey that would change everything. Whether they succeeded or failed, the galaxy would never be the same. The hidden starship was larger than anything Jiho had ever seen up close. It sat in a natural valley behind the mountain, covered by a camouflage field that made it nearly invisible from above. The ship's hull was made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "This is the Skybreaker," Bektu said with obvious pride. "She has been my home for over 200 years. Jiho walked around the ship in amazement. It was built for a dragon, with a cargo bay large enough for Bektu to rest comfortably and corridors wide enough for his massive form to move through. The design was unlike anything the boy had seen in Kaleth vessels or human ships. "Did you build it yourself?" Jiho asked. "With help from friends who are no longer alive," the dragon replied sadly. "The Corventhi were master shipbuilders before the Kaleth conquered their world. This ship uses their best technology combined with my own improvements. They spent the morning preparing for the journey to Kepler 442b. Bektu showed Jiho how to operate the ship's basic systems. The controls were designed for clawed hands much larger than human fingers, but the dragon had made modifications over the years to accommodate smaller crew members. "The artificial intelligence will help you if I am unable to pilot," Bektu explained. "Her name is Yeona. She has been with me almost as long as I have owned the ship." A gentle female voice spoke from hidden speakers. "Welcome aboard, young human. It is good to have new crew after so many lonely years." Jiho was surprised. Most ship AIs he had encountered were cold and mechanical. Yeona sounded warm and alive, almost like a real person. Yeona was based on the personality patterns of a dear friend, Bektu explained quietly. "She died defending her world from Kaleth invasion forces. In a way, she lives on in the ship's computer." They launched just after noon, the Skybreaker rising silently into the alien sky. Jiho watched through the viewports as the planet fell away below them. Soon they were in space, surrounded by the familiar darkness and distant stars. The journey to Kepler 442b would take 3 days using the hidden hyperspace routes that Bektu knew. These paths were too dangerous for most ships, winding through gravitational fields and cosmic storms that could tear apart vessels with inadequate shielding. But the Skybreaker had been built to handle such challenges. During the trip, Bektu taught Jiho about the different species they might encounter in the resistance networks. The Karathi were humanoid but covered in thick fur that changed color with their emotions. They valued honor and courage above all else, and they judged others by their actions in battle. Seonghwa lost his entire family when the Kaleth enslaved his people, the dragon explained. He has been fighting ever since, but the constant warfare has made him suspicious of outsiders. How do we convince him to trust us? We prove our worth. If his fighters are wounded, you heal them. If they are hungry, we share our food. The Karathi respect those who sacrifice for others. On the second day of travel, Yeona detected something troubling on the long-range sensors. A small fleet of ships was following them, staying just at the edge of detection range. "Kaleth hunters," Bektu said grimly. "They must have tracked us when we left the planet." Jiho felt his stomach drop. "How many ships?" 5, maybe 6. Fast attack vessels designed for pursuit and capture. Can we outrun them? The dragon's eyes gleamed with something that might have been anticipation. The Skybreaker was not built to run from fights, but we are not yet ready for a direct confrontation. We need allies first. Bektu changed course, heading for a nebula that would hide their heat signature and confuse enemy sensors. The journey to Kepler 442b would take longer now, but they would be harder to track. As they flew through the colorful gas clouds of the nebula, Jiho asked more questions about what they would find at their destination. The Karathi resistance operates from old mining stations in the asteroid belt, Bekdu explained. They move frequently to avoid detection. Finding them will require patience and the right approach signals. What if they shoot first and ask questions later? That is possible. Xianghua has survived this long by trusting no one completely, but I have helped his people before. He knows my ship and my reputation. On the third day, they emerged from hyperspace near Kepler 442b. The system looked like a graveyard. The planet itself was a barren wasteland, its surface strip-mined and polluted by decades of Kaleth industrial operations. Orbital stations hung like broken teeth around the dead world. But the asteroid belt beyond the planet teemed with hidden activity. Bekdu guided the skybreaker through the floating rocks, following routes that only experienced pilots could navigate. Twice they passed close enough to abandoned mining platforms to see signs of recent use. There, Yona announced, I am detecting a transmission on Karathi resistance frequencies. The message was brief and encoded, but Bekdu understood it. The transmission gave coordinates for a meeting point deeper in the asteroid field. They found the hidden base inside a hollowed-out asteroid the size of a small moon. Landing bays were carved directly into the rock, concealed by sensor-blocking materials. The skybreaker settled into one of these bays with a soft thud. Xianghua was waiting for them with a dozen armed fighters. The Karathi leader was exactly what Jiho had expected from Bekdu's descriptions. He was tall and broad-shouldered, covered in gray fur that was streaked with silver. Battle scars marked his arms and face, and his dark eyes held the wariness of someone who had survived too many betrayals. Bekdu, Xianghua said in accented Standard Galactic, you look better than the last time I saw you. I heard the Kaleth had finally caught up with you. They tried, the dragon replied, but I had help from an unexpected source. Xianghua's gaze shifted to Jiho, and the boy felt like he was being measured and weighed. This is the human you mentioned in your message. He looks very young to be a healer. Age means little when it comes to natural ability, Bekdu said. Would you like a demonstration? The Karathi leader hesitated, then gestured to one of his fighters. The woman stepped forward, favoring her left leg. Even through her fur, Jiho could see the swelling around what must have been a serious injury. Minji was wounded 3 days ago during a raid on a Kaleth supply convoy, Xianghua explained. Our medical supplies are limited. The leg will heal eventually, but she cannot fight in her current condition. Jiho approached the injured fighter carefully. Minji watched him with suspicious eyes, her hand resting on the grip of her weapon. May I? The boy asked softly. After a moment, Minji nodded and sat down on a nearby crate. She rolled up the leg of her flight suit, revealing a deep gash that was infected and inflamed. Jiho placed his hands gently over the wound. As always, he felt the strange warmth flow through him, carrying away the pain and sickness. The infected tissue began to heal, new skin growing to close the gash. Within minutes, Minji's leg looked completely normal. The injured fighter stood up and tested her weight on the leg. She took a few experimental steps, then broke into a wide grin. It feels like new, she announced to the others. Better than new. The old ache from an earlier injury is gone too. Xianghua stared at Jiho with new respect. I have seen many healers from different species. None of them could do anything like that. This is why humans represent hope for all of us, Bekdu said. They can do things that should be impossible. Things that could change the balance of power in this war. The Karathi leader was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. Finally, he spoke. There is something you should know. The Kaleth have increased their patrols in this sector. They are searching for something specific, offering large rewards for information about human survivors. Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. They know I am here. They know someone with unusual abilities has been helping people across several star systems, Xianghua corrected. But they do not know exactly where you are or what you can do. Yet, Bekdu added grimly. Which is why we must act quickly, the Karathi leader said. If you truly want to build an alliance between resistance groups, now is the time. Before the Kaleth realize what we are planning. As the three of them began to discuss strategy, Jiho realized that their small rebellion was about to become something much larger and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The resistance meeting was held in the deepest part of the asteroid base. Representatives from 7 different species sat around a circular table, their forms creating strange shadows in the dim lighting. Jiho had never seen so many different kinds of beings in one place before. Xianghua introduced each group. The Velkans were tall and thin with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer like metal. Their leader, Admiral Hyunsu, commanded a small fleet of ships that had been harassing Kaleth trade routes for months. Her people were masters of technology and space combat. The crystalline beings from Vendra Prime looked like living gemstones. Their representative, who called himself Tai Wu, spoke through harmonic vibrations that somehow translated directly into thoughts. His species possessed advanced mental abilities that the Kaleth had never fully understood. There were others too. The insectoid Thraxians with their chitinous armor, the plant-like Sylvani who could communicate with any form of life, the energy beings called ethereals who existed as glowing clouds of conscious light. Each of our groups has been fighting the Kaleth Empire for years, Admiral Hyunsu explained to Jiho. But we have never worked together, because we could not trust each other enough. The Empire encourages this. Mistrust, added the Thraxian representative. Clicking his mandibles, they spread stories about how dangerous other species are. Most of us have never actually met beings from other worlds except as enemies. Baekdu stood at one end of the table, his massive form dominating the room. This is why Jiho represents such an important opportunity. He has no political agenda, no ancient grudges against other species. He simply helps whoever needs healing. But can one human boy really unite groups that have been suspicious of each other for generations? Asked the Sylvani speaker, her voice like rustling leaves. Show them, Xianghua said to Jiho. Show them what you did for Minji. The boy felt nervous with so many alien eyes watching him. But Taewu, the crystalline being, projected a sense of calm and encouragement that helped steady his nerves. I cannot really explain how it works, Jiho began. I just touch someone who is hurt or sick and somehow I can take their pain away. Admiral Hyunsu leaned forward with interest. We have several wounded fighters aboard our ships. Our medical supplies are running low after our last battle with a Kaleth patrol. I could try to help them, Jiho offered. The Velkan admiral exchanged glances with her companions, then nodded. Very well, but we will need proof that this healing ability is real. They moved to the base's medical bay, where several injured fighters from different species were recovering from recent battles. Jiho went from bed to bed, placing his hands on wounds and infected injuries. Each time, the healing warmth flowed through him, taking away pain and accelerating the natural healing process. A Thraxian soldier with a broken arm watched in amazement as the bone knitted itself back together. A Sylvani fighter whose leaves had been burned by energy weapons saw new growth replace the damaged tissue. Even an ethereal whose energy matrix had been disrupted by Kaleth weapons felt their coherence returning. Incredible, whispered Admiral Hyunsu. In all my years of space combat, I have never seen anything like this. But Taewu was studying Jiho with deeper interest. The crystalline being's harmonic vibrations carried a note of excitement. This is not just advanced healing. The human is actually altering reality at a fundamental level. What do you mean? Baekdu asked. I can sense quantum fluctuations around him when he works. He is not just treating symptoms or speeding up natural processes. He is actually changing the quantum state of living tissue, reversing damage that has already occurred. The other representatives looked confused, but the dragon's golden eyes gleamed with understanding. You are saying his abilities operate outside normal physical laws. Exactly. This explains why the Kaleth scientists could not understand how human abilities work. They were looking for biological or technological explanations for something that transcends conventional science. Jiho felt overwhelmed by the technical discussion. All he knew was that he could help people feel better. He had never thought about quantum states or reality alteration. Does it matter how it works? He asked. What matters is that it does work, and I want to use it to help as many people as possible. The simple honesty in his voice seemed to touch something in each of the alien representatives. Here was a being who possessed incredible power but used it only to heal and help others. The boy is right, Xianghua said firmly. We have been fighting separately for too long while the Kaleth Empire grows stronger. If working together gives us a chance to actually win this war, then we should try it. Admiral Hyunsu nodded slowly. My fleet will join this alliance. But we need more than just healing abilities to defeat an empire. We need a real strategy. I have been thinking about that, Baekdu said. The Kaleth maintain control through their network of detention facilities and research stations. They hold prisoners from dozens of worlds, keeping families separated and spirits broken. You are suggesting rescue missions, Taewoo observed. I am suggesting something bigger, a coordinated strike against multiple facilities at once. Free as many prisoners as possible and show the galaxy that the Empire can be defeated. The Thraxian representative clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Such an operation would require precise coordination between our forces. We have never attempted anything on that scale. But the psychological impact would be enormous, added the Silvani speaker. Seeing their people freed would inspire resistance movements on dozens of worlds. As the discussion continued, Jiho found himself thinking about the other human survivors who might still be imprisoned in those facilities. Mira with her ability to make plants grow, Sunho who could phase through solid matter, others whose names he did not even know. There is something else, he said quietly, and the room fell silent. The Kaleth are holding other humans like me in their research facilities. People with abilities that might be even more useful in this fight. You want to rescue your own people, Admiral Hyunsu said with understanding. I want to rescue everyone, Jiho corrected. Humans, Velkans, Karathi, all of them. But yes, finding the other survivors is important to me. Baekdu placed a gentle claw on the boy's shoulder. Then that will be our first priority. Intelligence gathering to locate these facilities, followed by coordinated rescue operations. And after that? Asked Seonghwa. The dragon's eyes held a fierce light. After that, we show the Kaleth Empire what happens when free beings work together instead of fighting each other. The meeting continued late into the station's artificial night. Plans were made, resources allocated, and communication protocols established. By morning, what had started as separate resistance groups had become something new and dangerous to the Empire's continued existence. As Jiho finally found time to rest in quarters provided by Seonghwa, he thought about how much his life had changed since that day in the cave. He was no longer just a frightened refugee running from world to world. He was part of something bigger now, something that might actually have a chance of bringing peace to the galaxy. But he also knew that the real test was still ahead. The Kaleth Empire would not give up their power without a fight, and the battles to come would determine the fate of countless worlds. The first rescue mission began 3 weeks after the alliance was formed. Intelligence gathered by Velkan scouts had located a major Kaleth detention facility in the Proxima Centauri system. The prison held over 2,000 prisoners from 30 different worlds, including at least 6 human survivors. Jiho stood on the bridge of the Skybreaker, watching the target facility through the main view screen. The prison was built into a large asteroid, its surface bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Kaleth warships patrolled the surrounding space in regular patterns. The facility looks heavily defended, Admiral Hyunsu reported from her flagship. My tactical analysis shows at least 40 weapon emplacements and a garrison of 500 guards. We are not here to fight a battle, Baekdu reminded the fleet commanders. This is a rescue operation. Get in, free the prisoners, and get out before the Kaleth can respond with reinforcements. The plan was complex but elegant. Taewoo and his crystalline companions would create quantum distortions to confuse the prison's sensors. The Thraxian fighters would disable the external weapons while Velkan ships provided cover. Meanwhile, Jiho and a small team would infiltrate the facility directly. Remember, Seonghwa said over the communication link, we need to move fast. Intelligence suggests the Kaleth are planning to transfer the human prisoners to a more secure location within days. The attack began at dawn, according to the station's artificial time cycle. Taewoo's quantum manipulations made the rescue fleet appear as nothing more than background cosmic radiation to the prison's scanners. The defenders had no warning until Thraxian fighters were already among them, their precise strikes taking out weapons and communication arrays. Jiho found himself aboard a small infiltration craft piloted by Minji, the Karathi fighter he had healed during their first meeting. She guided the ship through the chaos of the battle, slipping past the distracted guards and finding a docking port on the prison's lower level. The human prisoners are being held in maximum security block 7, Minji said, checking her scanner. That is 3 levels down and heavily guarded. They move through the prison corridors like shadows, avoiding patrols and security cameras. Jiho had never been inside a Kaleth facility before. The walls were clean white metal, broken by doors that looked more like vault entrances than prison cells. Everything was designed to break the spirits of those trapped inside. The first prisoners they encountered were not human, but Silvani. their plant-like forms withered from lack of proper light and nutrition. Jiho placed his hands on the worst cases, channeling healing energy to restore their strength. "Who are you?" one of the freed Silvani asked in amazement as color returned to her leaves. "Friends," Jiho said simply. "We are here to take you home." They worked their way deeper into the facility, freeing prisoners from each block they passed. Karathi miners, Velkan technicians, beings from species Jiho had never seen before. Each group was weak from captivity, but his healing touch restored enough strength for them to walk. Finally, they reached maximum security Block 7. The guards here were more alert, but Minji's military training served them well. She disabled 2 sentries silently while Jiho worked on the electronic locks. The first cell they opened contained a young woman with dark hair and exhausted eyes. She looked up at them with confusion and hope. "Sunho?" Jiho whispered. The woman's face transformed with recognition and joy. "Jiho, I cannot believe it. We thought you were dead." Sunho was one of the 7 humans who had escaped with him from the research station months ago. Her ability to phase through solid matter had helped them steal the ship that carried them to freedom. Seeing her alive filled Jiho with more happiness than he had felt since Earth's destruction. "Mira is here too," Sunho said quickly, "and Kyungho and Jiwon. The Kaleth have been running tests on us trying to understand how our abilities work." They freed the other human survivors quickly. Mira looked thin and weak, but her eyes still held the gentle strength that Jiho remembered. Kyungho, who could sense emotions from great distances, smiled through his tears at being rescued. Jiwon, whose ability to manipulate gravity had saved them many times before, hugged Jiho like a long-lost brother. But their reunion was interrupted by alarms echoing through the facility. The Kaleth had finally realized they were under attack. "We need to move," Minji urged. "The guards will be here in minutes." Getting out proved more difficult than getting in. The corridors were now filled with armed guards searching for the infiltrators. But the rescued prisoners proved surprisingly resourceful despite their weakened condition. Sunho used her phasing ability to scout ahead, passing through walls to warn them of guard positions. Jiwon manipulated gravity fields to make their group lighter, allowing them to move faster through the facility. Even Mira, barely able to stand, used her connection to plant life to encourage the Silvani prisoners to keep going. The escape became a running battle through the prison's lower levels. Minji's combat skills kept them ahead of the guards while the human survivors used their abilities to overcome obstacles that should have been impossible to pass. They reached their ship just as Kaleth. Reinforcements arrived from the outer system. The rescue fleet was already withdrawing, their cargo bays filled with freed prisoners from dozens of worlds. "All ships, this is Admiral Hyun-soo," came the voice over the communication system. "Jump to hyperspace in 60 seconds. The Kaleth battle fleet has just dropped out of FTL. The Skybreaker and the other rescue ships vanished into hyperspace, just as the first enemy weapons began firing. Behind them, they left an empty prison and a very angry Kaleth garrison. But they had also left something else. Word of the successful rescue spread quickly through the galaxy's underground networks. For the first time in decades, beings across hundreds of worlds began to believe that the Kaleth Empire could be defeated. Aboard the Skybreaker, Jiho sat with his fellow human survivors in the ship's common area. They looked older than he remembered, marked by months of imprisonment and experimentation, but they were alive and they were free. "What happens now?" Mira asked, her voice still weak but filled with hope. "Now we heal," Jiho said, placing his hands on her shoulders and channeling warmth into her tired body. "And then we help others heal too." "The Kaleth will be hunting us more than ever," Kyungho observed, his empathic senses picking up the emotional states of everyone on the ship. "They cannot afford to let word of this rescue spread too far." Baekdu's massive form appeared in the doorway, his golden eyes bright with satisfaction. "Let them hunt. We have allies now and safe places to hide. More importantly, we have hope." "What about the other facilities?" Sunho asked. "There are still thousands of prisoners in Kaleth hands. We will free them all," the dragon promised. "This is just the beginning." As the Skybreaker raced through hyperspace toward a rendezvous with the other rescue ships, Jiho felt something he had not experienced since Earth's destruction. He felt like he was part of a family again. Not just the human survivors, but the entire alliance of different species working together for freedom. The war against the Kaleth Empire was far from over. But for the first time since the nightmare began, victory seemed possible. 6 months had passed since the first rescue mission. The Alliance had grown from 7 species to over 30, with resistance cells operating across the galaxy. But the Kaleth Empire had not been idle. Their response to the prison break had been swift and brutal. With increased security at all remaining facilities and bounties placed on every known resistance leader, Jiho stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, a massive space platform that served as the Alliance's mobile headquarters. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of different worlds working together to modify weapons, share supplies, and plan operations. It was amazing how much had changed. Species that had never trusted each other were now fighting side by side. Karathi engineers worked with Velkan technicians to upgrade ship systems. Thraxian warriors trained alongside Sylvani healers. The quantum abilities of the crystalline beings were being combined with human intuition to create new forms of communication across vast distances. "You look thoughtful," Mira said, joining him at the viewing wall. His sister, by choice, had recovered fully from her imprisonment, and her ability to encourage plant growth had become crucial to maintaining food supplies for the growing fleet. "I was thinking about how far we have come," Jiho replied. "Sometimes I can hardly believe this is real." Through the months of fighting and rescuing, the human survivors had discovered something remarkable. When they worked together, their individual abilities became much stronger. Jiho's healing power could now affect entire groups of people at once. Sunho could phase herself and others through solid barriers. Jiwan could create gravity fields large enough to hide entire fleets from enemy sensors. "The Kaleth are planning something big," Mira said, her expression growing serious. Kyungo sensed it during his last reconnaissance mission. "Their emotions are different now. Less confident, more desperate?" Jiho nodded. The Alliance's success had shaken the Empire's leadership. Dozens of successful rescue missions had freed thousands of prisoners and inspired rebellions on previously quiet worlds. The Kaleth were losing control, and desperate enemies were the most dangerous kind. "Bekdu wants to see you," Mira continued. "He is in the strategy room with the other commanders." Jiho made his way through Haven Station's corridors, passing beings from species he was still learning to identify. The station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built by combining the best technology from every member world. It could jump to hyperspace at a moment's notice, making it nearly impossible for Kaleth forces to track. In the strategy room, holographic displays showed the current state of the war across the galaxy. Red zones marked Kaleth-controlled territory, while blue areas indicated Alliance influence. The map was slowly but steadily shifting in their favor. "Jiho," Admiral Hyunsu greeted him. "We need to discuss the intelligence from our latest mission." The rescue of a Kaleth research facility in the Vega system had yielded more than just prisoners. They had also captured detailed records of the Empire's most secret projects. What they found had disturbed everyone who read the reports. "The Kaleth have been studying our abilities for over a year," Taewoo explained, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated colors. "They have been trying to create artificial versions of human powers. Have they succeeded?" Jiho asked, though he was afraid of the answer. "Partially," Bekdu said grimly. "They cannot replicate the full range of your abilities, but they have developed weapons that can disrupt the quantum fields you manipulate. In simple terms, they have created devices that can block your healing power." This was troubling news. Jiho's ability to heal both physical wounds and emotional trauma had been crucial to keeping the Alliance united. If the Kaleth could prevent him from helping injured fighters, it would seriously damage their effectiveness. "There is more," Admiral Hyunsu continued. "The research files indicate that the Empire is preparing a massive counterattack. They are gathering their largest fleet in the Centaurus sector, preparing to strike at multiple Alliance strongholds simultaneously." "How long do we have?" Songhua asked from his position at the tactical display. "According to their timetable, perhaps 3 weeks," the Velkan admiral replied. "They intend to crush our resistance before it can spread to more worlds." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. The Alliance had grown strong, but it was still vastly outnumbered by Imperial forces. In a direct military confrontation, they would likely be defeated. "We need to change the nature of the conflict," Jiho said quietly, and everyone turned to look at him. "The Kaleth expect us to fight like a traditional rebellion. Hit-and-run attacks, guerrilla warfare, slowly wearing down their forces. But what if we tried something completely different? What did you have in mind? Bekdu asked with interest. Jiho walked over to the galactic display, studying the patterns of Imperial control. The Kaleth maintain power through fear and division. They convince different species that other aliens are dangerous, that cooperation leads to disaster. But what if we could show them the truth? I do not understand, Xianghua said. The quantum connection abilities that Tewu's people possess combined with human empathy. What if we could create a temporary link between the minds of beings across entire star systems? Let them experience what we have learned about working together. Tewu's crystalline structure began resonating with excitement. A consciousness bridge on a galactic scale. It is theoretically possible, but it would require enormous amounts of energy and perfect coordination. And it would be incredibly dangerous, Admiral Hyunsu added. Such a link would affect everyone within range, including our own people. That is exactly the point, Jiho said with growing conviction. For the first time in galactic history, different species would actually understand each other. They would feel what others feel, see through alien eyes, experience the universe from completely different perspectives. Bekdu's golden eyes gleamed with understanding. The Kaleth soldiers would experience the pain they have caused. The fear and suffering of their victims would become their own emotions. But our people would also experience the emotions of the Kaleth, Mira pointed out. They would understand that most Imperial soldiers are as much victims of the system as those they oppress. Which is why it might actually work, Jiho replied. Instead of defeating the Kaleth through violence, we would defeat them through understanding. Show them and everyone else that cooperation is better than conquest. The debate continued for hours. The plan was dangerous beyond anything they had attempted before. Creating a consciousness bridge across multiple star systems would require every human survivor working together, supported by the quantum manipulation abilities of dozens of crystalline beings. If something went wrong, the psychic feedback could destroy the minds of everyone involved. But the alternative was a conventional war that they would probably lose, resulting in the destruction of everything they had built. There is one more consideration, Kyungho said, his empathic abilities allowing him to sense the emotional currents in the room. If we succeed, we will change the galaxy forever. Species that have been enemies for thousands of years will suddenly understand each other completely. The social and political effects will be enormous. Change is exactly what the galaxy needs, Jiho said firmly. The old ways of fear and mistrust have caused too much suffering. Maybe it is time for something new. In the end, the decision was unanimous. The Alliance would attempt something that had never been tried before in galactic history. They would create a bridge between minds across the stars, allowing different species to truly understand each other for the first time. Preparations began immediately. The human survivors worked with Tewu and his people to develop the quantum resonance devices needed for the consciousness bridge. Ships were dispatched to carry these devices to key locations throughout the galaxy. Alliance members prepared themselves mentally for an experience unlike anything in recorded history. As the day of the operation approached, Jiho found himself thinking about his parents and the billions of other humans who had died when Earth was destroyed. They had believed that humanity would find a way to survive and make a positive difference in the universe. Now, standing on the bridge of Haven Station as the consciousness bridge activated, Jiho realized that his parents had been right. Humanity had survived, and they were about to change the galaxy in ways no one could have imagined. The quantum field expanded outward from dozens of points simultaneously, creating a web of connection that encompassed entire star systems. For the first time in galactic history, beings from hundreds of different worlds experienced true empathy with alien minds. Kaleth soldiers felt the terror of the civilians they had oppressed. Alliance fighters understood the fear and indoctrination that had shaped their enemies. Across the galaxy, the artificial barriers between species began to crumble, as beings realized they all shared the same basic hopes and fears. The war did not end with a great battle or dramatic surrender. It ended with understanding, as both sides realized they had been fighting the wrong enemy all along. The real enemy had been ignorance and fear, and those could only be defeated through connection and empathy.